Okay, let's get right into this. What if I told you that a 2,000-year-old Buddhist text held some of the most surprising and maybe even challenging advice on family life you've ever heard? Today, we're going to look at a sutra that tackles two absolutely timeless problems. How do you repay your parents? And how do you create real harmony in a household? The answers, well, they might not be what you think. So, let's start with a big question, one that people have wrestled with for, well, forever. Just think about your own life for a second, your own family. Is there one debt that feels so huge, so profound, that you feel like you could never, ever truly pay it back? Well, this ancient text has a very specific answer in mind. The first part of the sutra dives right into this idea of an unrepayable debt, and specifically it's talking about the one we owe to our parents. It uses this really powerful metaphor to make its point crystal clear. Now just try to picture this for a moment. Really visualize it. The sutra asks us to imagine the most extreme act of physical devotion you can think of, literally carrying your parents on your shoulders every single day for your entire life until the day you die. It's just an incredible image of total sacrifice and effort. And then the text just drops this bombshell. Even that unbelievable lifelong act of service is still not enough to repay the kindness of your parents. So you have to ask, right? If that's not enough, what on earth could possibly be? And this is where things get really interesting. The sutra pivots away from what we usually think of as repayment, service, gifts, money, to something else entirely. It's like it proposes a completely different currency for paying off this debt. So look at this contrast, it's pretty stark. On the one hand, you have what the text basically dismisses. It says, even if you gave your parents every treasure in the world, we're talking jade, pearls, you name it, it still wouldn't cut it. But then, on the other hand, you see the sutra's real answer, guiding them spiritually, helping them move from ignorance toward wisdom or from cruelty toward kindness. That's the real stuff. So here's the bottom line. The sutra completely redefines what true filial piety, that's just a classic term for respecting your parents, actually means. It's not about being a servant or showering them with gifts. Nope. It's about spiritual guidance. The greatest gift you can possibly give your parents, it argues, is helping them become better, kinder, and wiser human beings. So the sutra offers this really profound way to think about our duty to our parents. But family life is messy, it's complex, and the text gets that. So it shifts gears to tackle another huge source of conflict in any household, the relationship between spouses. And it does this through a really compelling story. So let's meet the protagonist of our second story here. His name is Sudatta. The text tells us he's a really good guy, virtuous, respected. But at home, things are an absolute mess. Yeah, this part of the sutra, it almost reads like a short little drama. It's all centered on Sudatta and his daughter-in-law, a woman named Yu-ye. So here's the setup. Yu-ye, she comes from a very powerful, very wealthy family. And because of her high status, she acts with this incredible arrogance. The text says for years, she's been just awful to her husband and his parents, totally disrespectful. Sudatta is at his wit's end, so he goes straight to the Buddha himself and basically begs him for help. Now, in response, the Buddha doesn't just give a simple piece of advice. Instead, he lays out this incredibly clear, structured framework for Yu-ye to help her understand her own behavior. He calls it the 7 paths, or 7 types, of a wife. He breaks it all down into 7 distinct archetypes of conduct. These are presented as 3 negative paths and 4 positive paths that a wife can choose to follow in her marriage. And this table is just a brilliant illustration of the Buddha's teaching method in the story. He lays it all out, plain as day. The 3 evil types are the wife who acts like an enemy, actively wishing her husband fails, the one who's like a thief, just wasting all his resources, and the one who's lazy and always looking for a fight. Then you've got the 4 good types. The wife who cares for her husband like a mother would, respects him the way a younger sibling respects an older one, greets him with genuine joy like a good friend, or, using the language of the time, serves him diligently like a servant, enduring hardship without complaining. So after explaining this whole framework, the Buddha turns to Yu-ye and asks her, point blank, which of these paths is she going to choose? And according to the text, she has this profound moment of clarity, a total change of heart. She renounces her arrogant ways and vows to embody the archetype that, in the sutra's view, represents the highest form of selfless service, that of the servant. And the result is immediate. Her decision to change her own conduct completely transforms the family dynamic. The conflict just dissolves, and harmony is finally restored to Sudatta's home. The framework worked. It provided a clear path to peace. So let's just step back for a minute and think about what these two ancient stories are really offering us. I mean, sure, they come from a world with very different social norms, but the core principles they're digging into are surprisingly relevant today. So if we had to boil it down, what are the big takeaways? First, real respect for our parents is about their spiritual well-being, not just giving them stuff. Second, peace in the family comes from how we act, our own righteous conduct, not from our social status. And finally, the Sutra gives us these clear archetypes, this framework that we can use for our own self-reflection and growth. And all of this leaves us with a final, pretty big question to think about. While yeah, some of the language and the social roles in this text might feel a bit dated, those core ideas are pretty timeless. How might our own family relationships change if we prioritize spiritual and emotional growth over just material things? Or if we focus more on our own conduct instead of getting caught up in the status of others? It's a powerful thought to take with you. Just so you know, this whole exploration was based on the Sutra spoken by the Buddha, which is number 141 in the Taisho Tripitaka, and we use text from the Chinese Buddhist Electronic Text Association. Thanks so much for joining me to explore this fascinating piece of ancient family wisdom.